Hey guys, welcome back. I got the 450 behind me, and today I'm going to show you how to do an oil change in a 2020 kx450. What you're going to need, at least in my case, is a KN207 filter. This is a cartridge filter, so just make sure that they give you the right one. You're going to need a quart of oil. When you do the filter, you're going to need a full quart, and I grabbed a plug just in case, and I'll make sure that I gap that before I put it in. You're going to need a 12 millimeter for the oil drain and an 8 millimeter for the filter cover. But let's just jump right into it. So right on the bottom here, if you have a skid plate, you're probably going to have to remove it, but right on the bottom, right there, is the drain plug. We can go ahead and pull that out. There we go. The engine oil actually looks pretty good. I usually only do 4 to 5 hours on an oil change, and then every other oil change I do a filter as well. So this time it's time to do the filter. I'm just going to set the drain plug right there. All right, the next step is to take out these two 8 millimeter bolts right here, and the cartridge filter should just pop out. Now on some bikes, these bolts are different lengths, and in this bike, you can actually see that the top one is really long compared to the bottom one, which is really short. I don't think they will go in that way, but just be mindful of that. And then this should just pop right off. Make sure I'm not going to make a mess here. And I made a little bit of a mess, but that's fine. And so now we have our filter, which is right there, and that should just come right out. I might need to grab a little screwdriver to get that out. All right, we're going to try a different tactic. The old trusty snap ring pliers, which I use them for more than just snap rings. Perfect. And let's just take a peek in there. Nothing was left in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and pull this off, because this is where our oil is going to go in. Alright, so usually I just let that sit and drain completely to make sure that we get everything out. And then it's just as simple as putting everything back in. Alright, now that the oil has drained out completely, we just kind of got to put everything back the way that it was. I'm going to start by putting my drain plug back in. Grab my ratchet here. Make sure that the copper washer is there like it's supposed to be, and this does not need to be very tight at all. And I like to usually wipe it down just in case to see if I have any leaks later on. Now I'm going to grab my filter. and it is going to go in this direction, just like that. And just remember that the little bolt goes on the bottom. And the big bolt goes on the top. We're just going to snug those up. These do not have to be very tight. There's gaskets on either side. There we go. Now, on some bikes, there's actually usually right by the oil fill, there's a number stamped on the case that tells you how many milliliters of oil that it takes. But this bike does not seem to have that. You know, usually it's sometimes like right here, but this one does have a looking glass. And let's open up the manual and see what the manual says about this. I actually just realized that I made a mistake here. I'm hoping other people caught it as well. There is a spring that needs to be in the top of this, and that puts pressure up against the filter, just like this. And so let me get those bolts in. All right, the spring is in and the bolts are back in and tightened up. So the manual actually does recommend 1040, which is what I've always put in my bikes, but I prefer Lucas. It does recommend to use Kawasaki oil, but that's just not my preference. And so you'll actually see that the capacity is 1 liter or 1.1 quart when the engine is completely dry, or 0.9 liters or 1 quart when the filter was removed. So I need to put 1 quart of oil back in the engine. So the manual actually tells us how to check this oil. And so there is 3 marks on this glass, A, B, and C. C being low level and B being high level. And so once the engine is warmed up, you turn the engine off, let all of the oil settle, and ideally your engine oil should be between C and B. Other than that, as long as you can see the oil in this window, you should be good, but don't overfill, because overfilling is just as bad. So I've got my drain plug in, I've got my filter back in, and now all I have to do is pour the oil in. This is kind of hard to do with one hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and set the GoPro down. All right, now that the oil is in, I used the entire quart. I'm just gonna put the oil fill cap back on. And then just use a standard screwdriver to tighten it up. That's it. All right, now I'm just gonna double check my wearables. First thing, this tire is looking pretty tired. The last time that I went out, I was having a very hard time keeping traction. I was slipping quite a bit. So that is coming up here pretty soon, which doesn't surprise me. And then let's check these brake pads. The rear brake pads look just fine. The rotors look good. You're not really supposed to check the chain unless the rear tire's up off the ground, but I know the chain is fine because I just adjusted it after my last ride. And let's double check these front pads. The front pads look a little skinny. Probably get a couple more rides out of them before they need to be replaced, but that's no surprise because I am pretty front brake heavy. And then the engine coolant should be good to go. I haven't had any leaks. I did just check it. Other than that, she should be ready to rip. So coming up, I'm going to be doing an oil change and spark plug change on my Suzuki B-King. It is pretty involved. I have to change these spark plugs at least once a year. If I don't, the bike will backfire and it'll run pretty crappy. But I have a road trip coming up next weekend, and I want to make sure that the bike's going to run at its best. But I got the filter, I got the plugs, and then the oil is on the way. If you guys like this video, I would appreciate it if you drop a like, maybe leave a subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.